It's quite frustrating. We found ourselves in what might be the most annoying time in this culture war period, where we have a lot of infighting that's just really brain dead, as a whole lot of people are standing up for something that doesn't even exist, and the other people are all screaming their heads off, begging people please come back to normalcy. We have a handful of people in this anti-woke space who are very influential, very loud, and have a lot of followers who are saying the wrong thing. And I don't mean the wrong thing as in the unapproved thing. They're lying. They're straight up telling lies, and that's empowering our opposition to become stronger and more convicted in their convictions. It's leading people to believe that all of us are a bunch of grifting losers who are lying. These kind of people who are saying the wrong things, as in wrong, I mean lying of course, are convincing people that all of us are like this, and is showing people that our message is meaningless and nothing more than a grift. That's the real problem. And it's something that's been going on for a long time. It started earlier this year with some Stellar Blade stuff, and it continued going with the whole Goonergate situation, and now we're finally here to Split Fiction. The issue with Split Fiction's whole controversy, however, is it seems to be unfounded entirely. Whereas some of the other ones had some grounds to complain about, given the fact that it was about anti-gooner stuff. People basically having two sets of characters, so there was at least a principle to stand on, even though it was a really flawed and horrible principle. This one, the only principle, seems to be bullshit. And this has really come ahead when you consider two key players, Yorch Torch Games and Smash JT. Now, Smash JT is much more common sense. He's speaking up for the audience, the crowd, for people. He might not be a gamer, but he actually cares about games and cares about the gaming environment. Yorch Torch Games, however, seems to be on the other side of the spectrum. He also doesn't seem to be a gamer, but he seems more interested in lining his own follower count than he does actually saying anything truthful. He's really pushing down a narrative that he assists his personal beliefs, it seems, without basing it in any kind of fact, leaving everyone really confused what he's going after. And like I said, that has really come ahead now with Split Fiction, as he's going out screaming to the wind how it's an uber feminist game, how it's super woke, super anti-standardism, pro-DEI, lots of just bullshit that's completely unsubstantiated. And Smash GT has done an excellent breakdown, so before I go any further, like, subscribe, and let's get into this. Now, like I said, this is coming from Smash AT and his website, and he's put up a video similar to it, so if you have the time, check out his video once you're done with mine. Now, I will say there's one issue with Smash AT's website. You see, I use a highlighter tool, so I know what I'm going to talk about, and his website, for some reason, completely prevents the highlighter tool from working, but whatever. But anyway, Split Fiction's success puts anti-woke grifter in absolute meltdown mode. Split Fiction is really confusing the hell out of some of these anti-woke Christian grifters out there, and I gotta be honest, I'm absolutely here for it, specifically Yorch Torch Games. And to be clear, I have no issue with Yorch Torch Games on a whole. I have an issue with him lying and grifting, but if he comes around and stops doing that and starts speaking what the audience wants him to speak, then there's nothing wrong. But he's really been doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on these takes that very few people actually support. His only company is people like JDA, John De La Rose, who, well, we know his furry fandom, and that's all causing a lot of schisms within this environment, because we've had people who were very close for a while, now heavily butting heads, all because of one small group, a very tiny minority, pushing this narrative that is completely unfounded. And as Smash JT points out here, it is safe for a few loonies out there who are actually saying anything. In the truth of the matter, we're really looking at the 80-20 rule. 80% of what is said by 20% of the audience, but right now we're really looking at a 96-4. 96% of what's being said is said by 4% of the audience. It's so unreasonably small, such an unreasonably small portion of our movement and our environment that are actually saying that these games are bad or woke. But the problem is, they're so loud and they have so many followers, and what they say is just right, that is catching the attention of people who should be on our side. For instance, alienating the creator of Split Fiction, who might very well have either stayed completely neutral or might even support some of the anti-woke movement claims if he wasn't being unjustly attacked. Now, I generally trust Smash JT. I think he's a really great creator, and I usually believe what he has to say. And according to him, he has played the game for about 7 hours with Hypnotic at the time of writing this article. Hypnotic is also great. And according to him, they're both completely addicted and have so far found absolutely no wokeness, DEI, intersectionality, or feminism within the actual game at all. And yet these two are some of the best watchdogs when it comes to finding this kind of stuff out, so there's really no reason for them to be lying to us about it. And more importantly, the thing is, the market and audience always seems to be on top of it when someone is lying, when someone's grifting. People always seem to know, and it usually reflects in the player count. Now, one small issue, Split Fiction has 42,000 players already in 48 hours, 239,000 players, and to some people who don't really know how optics look, they might find that to be a very concerningly low number. But that completely falls apart when you consider one key thing. It only takes one copy of Split Fiction for 2 people to play it. You see, Steam has this awesome feature called Play Together, which is basically couch co-op, but from different computers, and it only counts as one person playing. So for every single one person playing, you probably have 2 people playing the game. And as I always have to point out, this is only the numbers on Steam, so it's likely to have similar numbers across different platforms. And when you consider it like that, 500,000 players 2 days into its release is pretty damn good for a game of this size. But the fact that this game seems to be relatively innocuous, that doesn't prevent Yorch Torch from going off of his meds, claiming that 2 dudes playing Split Fiction is the very definition of ultra lame and gay. Real men play Gears of War in co-op. Well, maybe you've already beaten Gears of War, you've already beaten A Way Out, you've already beaten Take-Two, you've already beaten all these other games. Sometimes 2 bros want to sit and play a game. And while you might be able to make an argument that the fact that it's 2 kind of dumpy looking women is kind of cringe, but we'll get to that in a minute. Another thing that Yorch Torch had tweeted out is, oh, I did it, and he even added this feminist slop to March's non-binary list. He can get all the inspiration from where he wants, but the game is being promoted as feminist slop, and my golden rule never fails. If it looks feminist, and it talks feminist, and it walks feminist, the game is feminist. Plus, the female characters are totally missing the mark in the beauty department. Sure, some may say, oh come on, this isn't woke, but many of us already developed a sense for wokeness, and I don't want any of that in my games. Anyway, Split Fiction is non-binary. The one issue I have here is you look down here, so Assassin's Creed Shadows makes sense, Afrocentrism, LGBTQ propaganda, feminism, rampant wokeness, 33 Immortal, anti-Christian themes, race swaps, gender swaps, okay? Split Fiction, feminism, with no substantiation. If you could provide some substantiation, and I've looked on Yorch's X, I haven't found any substantiation backing up the claim that this game is filled with feminist slop. And if it is, please tell me, because I would like to avoid games that are. Something else that Yorch had tweeted out, uninspiring gameplay, lame female characters, rampant feminism, no need to waste time and money on Split Fiction, there are too many good games out there. And gamers, what happened to masculinity in gaming? Showing a comparison between Gears of War 2 and Split Fiction. Those are 2 different games. I don't know why you're comparing them. One is about authors who are both women, and one is about war soldiers who are both men. Those are 2 different styles. And then as for the previous comment, please, I would love some substantiation. If there's proof out there that what you're saying is accurate, then I would love to see it and hear it. Now, there's been some mention on the appearance of the female characters, so let's zoom in on this tweet a little bit. It's a bit low quality, so it's not great, but let's see exactly if they're particularly dumpy. The only thing I'd say is her face seems a bit flat in certain pictures. She's not exactly the most attractive, but I find this character down here to be perfectly reasonable to look at. Maybe Yorch is complaining that their tits aren't big enough, but that's far from enough to justify these claims. Or maybe he's just upset that there isn't enough cleavage, but that would be hypocritical because Yorch was just complaining about how there's too much sex in other games. It's the kind of position where you can't be on both sides, you've got to pick. Do you have an issue with characters being too sexual or not sexual enough? And if you somehow are in the middle ground, where exactly is it that you're drawing that line? And this is a tweet that really annoys me, honestly. Somebody asked Yorch, I'm generally curious, why do you think Split Fiction is feminist or woke? What's in it that makes it so? And Yorch responds, art direction, protagonist, dialogue, everything. So he didn't answer the question. He didn't tell us what's woke about it, what's feminist. He never actually told us. I would love to have known what he believed to be these things so I could judge it for myself. But by failing to provide an operational definition or any examples that match it, it's completely impossible to believe anything he's saying right now. And while I hope it's not true, I can't help but slightly agree with Smash JT's take here. It's such a predictable cycle at this point. It's already beyond dumb. Clearly his intent with all this is to draw attention and engagement farm. And it's clearly working because here I am covering it. Same. And taking a look over at Yorch Torch Games user summary on Social Blade, it seems to heavily back up the claim that this might just be engagement farming because he's getting a pretty good amount of attention. Now, one of the interesting things is he's lost a pretty substantial amount of followers since Smash AT started calling him out. He also tweets a lot of times a day, looking at approximately 100 tweets per day. So obviously something has to be working for him to keep going at this pace. But down here, Smash JT kind of encapsulates my issue with this entire thing. But here's the thing, this kind of approach is exactly what destroys potential great figures in the community and exposes them for exactly who they are. Sure, they get a bump in attention and eyeballs initially, but once people learn who you are, that attention fades as fast as it appears. In my honest opinion, people like this don't actually play games. They have zero intent to pick up a controller for any reason, ever. They're here for the sole purpose of using gamers as a vehicle to get them their next spot, nothing more, nothing less. And that is exactly what I believe is happening. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't, and maybe Yorch Torch can prove me wrong by having his coming to Jesus. But when you have somebody out here like Yorch Torch running his mouth calling things that are not DEI infested, what you are doing is you are empowering the people who are pro-DEI, anti-us, pro-liberalism, anti-Christian, basically every person on the other side of the aisle of us. What you're doing is you are empowering them to attack us. Because when Yorch says something stupid, Yorch represents the entire community. And when that happens, we get something like this website, the Woke Ranking, or other curator groups that are woke games detected parodying DEI Detected, and it's clear it's a parody because of how they're going about and doing it. And the problem with this is I've seen a lot of people covering it on Instagram and other social media sites, calling out these curator lists, showing off how ridiculous they are by labeling games that have nothing to do with DEI or wokeness, such as Watch Dogs, contains overtly pro-DEI and subtly pro-immigration messaging, features an artificially diverse cast, the hacker Bad Boy 17 is revealed to be a female Canadian immigrant. That has nothing to do with wokeness, that's not really what that is, and most importantly, Watch Dogs heavily predates the woke era. Or like this one, claiming Monument Valley is a slightly woke game, contains subtly pro-DEI messaging. The Ida's Dream DLC was made in part of partnership with Project Red Charity. 10 years ago. Monument Valley is an old game. It's not a new game. What are you doing calling this a woke game when, like I said, this predates wokeness entirely? This game has no political messaging in it whatsoever, unless you're just trying to claim that the use of a female protagonist makes it woke. And that's the thing. These curator groups are saying that. I'm not sure what the name of it is. I'm sorry I can't find it, but there is a curator group out there that calls them something along the lines of Woke Detected, which has marked every single game with a female protagonist as being woke purely because it has a female protagonist. That's not what any of us believe in. That's not what a single person in this anti-woke crusade believe in. None of us have an issue on the front of a female protagonist. It labeled Portal 2 as woke. And that's the problem. It's not so much an issue that these things exist, it's that because they exist, liberals are taking it seriously and they think that's what we believe. They're using it to represent our beliefs when it has nothing to do with our beliefs. And in that exact same vein, people like John Della Rose and Yorch Torch Games are a cancer upon our movement because they are encouraging people to truly believe that we think these idiotic things, and they completely destroy and delegitimize our movement. If Yorch really believes this, great. I'm glad he has different thoughts than us. The fact that we're not an echo chamber is an amazing fact. But the bigger problem is that he is encouraging other people to think we are all like that. They already think we live in an echo chamber, and by Yorch being so loud and so aggressive with his messaging, he is convincing all of these people who could be swayed to our side that we're so much more extreme than we actually are. It's an issue I see a lot with conservative sides of media. People who are lost, confused, and looking for a place to go or a new avenue to explore reality will frequently find themselves completely lost. And when they see something that's kind of conservatively and like, oh, makes sense. And then they see something like Split Fiction is feminist because there are female protagonists. Like, whoa. That's legitimate sexism we're looking at. I can't be associated with that. And so you are scaring away people who could become a part of our movement by pushing too damn hard. We all know that the left me is a common idiom. So why are we running further away right than the people looking for a home to stay in can catch up to us in? Now there's some other statements from Yorch Torch Games that he makes on X that I want to quickly go over. So here's one of them. Gamers, some of you have asked me what I stand for, and here it is. I believe that games should be about fun above everything else. I believe that beautiful, attractive characters have a net positive impact on gamers' worldview. I believe that female characters shouldn't be censored, period. I believe that not every game has to cater to every single demographic. I believe that art direction is far more important than realistic graphics. I believe that games have become way too lengthy. We need to go back to games that can be finished in 2 to 3 hours. So off of those points real quick, I will say that so far everything is pretty good, except for some of the hypocrisy we're seeing. Yorch is complaining that split fiction doesn't appeal to him and his demographic, and yet he's also saying that games shouldn't have to cater to every single demographic. He is complaining about realistic graphics, but split fiction is more stylized, and I agree with him there. Stylization is infinitely better than great graphics. 2 to 3 hours for a game is not enough, in my opinion. That's a little too lacking. Let's see, also says, I believe that masculinity needs an urgent comeback in video games. True. I believe that games are a fantastic medium for teaching graphic design and architecture. Also true. I believe that game studios should hire based on merit rather than quotas, since quotas are illegal. Agreed. I believe that game developed for a particular demographic should be developed in general by that particular demographic. Thinking that an all-female team can deliver a great game for a male audience is nonsensical. The same applies in reverse. While I agree with the idea, the soul of that comment, in reality it's not entirely true. We've had some great female-led, female-focused games made by all-male teams and vice versa. It shouldn't be a rule, but it should be a standard. I believe the RPGification of action-adventure games and FPS titles have been a net negative for gaming. Agreed. And a few other things. Now, he says that I believe that activism has no place in gaming. That's another one of his points down here. And I have to say, you are pushing activism in gaming. You are saying that activism is a part of your gaming because you are asking for conservative-focused activism. Now, if you want conservative-focused activism, fine, but make it for the conservative audience. Same thing for leftist activism. It's fine if it's targeted towards the correct demographic. I believe that games like The Last of Us 2 or Life is Strange aren't games, they're propaganda platforms with harmful consequences for gamers. They contribute nothing positive to society, nothing. The real issue is they're movies and not games. They aren't games, I'll agree there, but it's not because they're propagandists, it's because that they are movies. But also, Split Fiction is a game that is heavily focused on being a game. The gameplay is one of the core parts about it, and yet here you are attacking it, claiming that it isn't. I believe that every game journalist or influencer should create a game of his or her own. You can't just talk the talk, you need to walk the walk, no excuses. Yorch, what's your game called? I'd love to play it. Give it a try. Do you have a game? Because if not, I don't really want to hear this. This is just rules for thee, not for me. And that is a lot of what Yorch has to say. Now, thankfully, Yorch actually expanded on what his issues with Split Fiction were. So let's go ahead and check out that tweet thread. So it's 5 reasons why Split Fiction is feminist slop. 1. Uninspiring female protagonists. Art direction has suffered greatly during the woke era. Well, that is true. And I will say, these are low-resolution, poorly taken photos. They look poorly taken. And if you look down here, it's actually very contrasted down here. These characters look significantly better than up here. Now, like I said, the brown-haired character, darker-skinned character, she's less attractive than the lighter-skinned character. I'll say they put more focus into the lighter-skinned character's face. But I don't see either of them being particularly intentionally uglified. Neither of them really have man-jaws, and they still seem very feminine. Number 2, the emphasis on emotional character development. Oh, good lord. Okay. Almost all of storytelling is focused on emotional development. Unless it's an explicitly episodic show where characters aren't allowed to grow because of the episodic nature, you're always going to have character development focused on emotions. That's Yorch. That's the core of the hero's journey. The hero's journey is an emotional character development pathway. It's a way for characters to develop emotionally. By this logic, you are saying that Star Wars is feminist slop. You are saying that Deus Ex and Dishonored are feminist slop, and you'd be very mistaken in claiming that. He calls it some of the dialogue, and looking at the dialogue here, how are we supposed to get out of here if we don't start to trust each other, follow my lead, get ready to flank him, oh shut up, to a male character. It's all about feminist empowerment. None of that is feminist empowerment. That I'm not seeing it. I would love it if that was there, but it's not. Now, he's complaining about how women talk, and yet he's talking like one at this point. The director's reaction to the game is woke comments and the shill media talking about it. Down here, he mentions the fact that when called out, somebody left a comment on YouTube, another feminism propaganda-soaked game. And to that, the creator of Split Fiction responded with, what the fuck is this? That's all he responded. So Yorch's issue here is that if the game wasn't feminist, he could have calmly explained why the game wasn't feminist, but he didn't. Yorch, you are claiming that there is an issue with femininity in these games, and yet you are doing the women thing of complaining that it's not what you said, it's how you said it. You are tone policing him. What this is you tone policing the guy who created Split Fiction, and tone policing is not a thing that men do. And then finally, the game's villain is a white Caucasian male. And while that is a trope that is common in feminist literature and media, that's not a end-all be-all. White men are a large portion of the population, and there are a lot of times where you could realistically just have a white male villain. I don't see you mentioning that he does anything that's particularly patriarchal or particularly anti-masculine or things that demonize masculinity. You say that he calls himself God, and of course the female protagonist rebel against God. Well, maybe he calls himself God because he's hedonistic, narcissistic, and self-centered. and has an inflated sense of self-importance, and not because he's saying white men see themselves as God. There's nothing in this that you've shared that proposes the idea that this guy is a monolith of all male characters. But ultimately, the lesson here is quite simple. We need to stop obsessing and falsely labeling things, because when you create the false label, you create an environment where we look like we're a bunch of retards. You make us look stupid, uneducated, undisciplined, and without any kind of conviction. You make us look terrible when you go out and you say this bullshit, because it's clear that you are lying when you do. I have no issue fighting against wokeness. That's my entire channel, is fighting back against wokeness. Now, you might be more focused on gender stuff. I'm mostly focused on LGBT stuff because I'm unfortunately a fag, but that's beyond the point. By falsely labeling things, we are creating a problem where people will be significantly less inclined to believe us in the future, and that's the last thing we need. So tighten up the message, let's get things together, let's start actually tackling the problems that exist before we start chasing after boogeymen. But that's pretty much all I've got, so I will see you guys on the next one.